This time in the Prop Master, well, I've just got a short little video for you where I deal with the decals that I kind of forgot to put on in the last video. Yeah, I mean, it's a short little video. But you know what they say, it's not the length of your video that counts, it's the enthusiasm with which you... I don't really do enthusiasm. So let's talk about the graphics on the jetpack real quick. Now you can go out on Amazon or Etsy and you can find waterslide transfers for that, or even stencils. And that's what I thought I would do. I would just go out and get that and I would send a link to you and you could do the same thing. But because we built this from scratch, it's a little bit different size in different areas, and so the transfers don't fit perfectly. And to be totally honest, I don't necessarily agree with the choices they made as to what the graphics actually look like. So I went online and I found a couple of images that I know to be actual images of one, the hero from Return of the Jedi, and another one is the exhibition jetpack that went around before the Return of the Jedi. Now they're a little different, so I did the graphics for both of them. But using those images, I did my best to accurately portray those graphics, and I put them in a file. And my thought was that you'd be able to, go in the description below, download that, print it out, and then cut them out and use it as a stencil to take a black, a brush and some black paint and just sort of dab it on there and do it that way. But these are kind of small and difficult shapes in some cases. And so even with a steadied hand and a very sharp blade, it was still going to be very difficult to do that accurately. Plus, if you're using the exhibition jetpack graphics, there's some at the bottom that are closed letters. So basically like an O or a D. So if you cut out the outline of the outside of the letter, you lose the inside detail. So that's not going to work. And I was a little lost at that point as to what I was going to do. But then I learned that you can actually get waterslide transfer paper for your inkjet printer and make them at home. So that's what we're going to do. And that's what I made. I gave you several different choices so you can make a mistake and still have some more to go with. And we're going to go step by step on how you print them out, and then there's some processes you have to do after you print it out to make it work as a waterslide transfer. We're even going to go into some additives that you can do to make it work a little better and look more like paint afterwards. But even though this is just a short video, that's actually quite a bit of stuff, so we better get to work. So let's start out by just talking about the decal paper itself. This is the Jackbor, which I can pretty much guarantee is not the way you're supposed to pronounce that. It's Jeckbor. And I went with this brand strictly because it's the one on Amazon that I could find that was 8.5 by 11 in size. Most of the ones that I saw were European sizing. And from what I can tell, looking at several sets of directions and watching several videos, they all work the same. So you can pick whichever one's going to fit your printer. Now there are some out there that say they're called no spray or non-spray waterslide decal paper. And I would not go with those strictly because from what I saw, they were all either a white background instead of clear, or they were very glossy, and you don't want any of those things. Now, when you load this in your printer, the main thing is that it has a matte side and a more glossy side, and you want to set it up so that it's going to be printing on that glossy side. And when you load it in your printer, you're going to set your printer to photo paper. Also, when you print this, you're going to set up your settings for photo paper. And I've included a link to my graphics page for the decals down in the description, and download that, print it, and then we'll take a look at what comes out. So when your print first comes out of the printer, the ink is still very wet. You need to be very careful with it. As you see, it'll smear badly. So you have to sort of set the ink. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can either, if you have a very accurate oven that is able to be set at such a low temperature, which I luckily do, you can set your oven to 175 degrees Fahrenheit or 80 degrees Celsius and leave it in there between a little more than 5 minutes. I tried it with 5 minutes and it was still a little bit soft, so I left it in for the full 10 minutes and it was good after that. So between 5 and 10 minutes. Or if you don't have an oven that is that accurate and is able to be set at such a low temperature, you can use a hairdryer. By the way, in order to test and see how accurate your oven is, you can buy oven thermometers that you can put inside your oven, and it'll tell you how hot your oven actually is compared to the temperature that you have it set at. And I did this one in the oven and it worked just fine. But for this one, we're going to use the hairdryer. And you just want to, first of all, you want to lay something down so that it won't blow away. And then just turn your hairdryer to hot and high. And we're going to blow dry this for, just like the oven, between 5 and 10 minutes, and then we'll try it. I'm going to try to hit everywhere on here. I don't want to just hit, one or two areas. I'm going to try to get the whole thing. That way, when I try to test to see if it's cured, I can test an area that I'm not going to use later. Okay, that's been about 5 minutes, and let's just check and see if it's still smearing. Yep, it still smears, so let's go a little longer. If you don't want to use the oven or the hairdryer, you can just leave this out for an hour and then come back and check it. I'm just a little too impatient for that. So let's try another maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, it's been about 5 more minutes, and let's test. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's test some of the important areas. Okay, so we're good. Now that this is safe to handle, let's go ahead and take a look at it and see if the printer printed it properly. Make sure there's no distortion in the print. Over the 7 inches that I have here, it's short by about maybe a 64th of an inch, maybe even less. I think that's going to be acceptable over, 7 inches there. Over the course of 10 inches, we're almost off a full, maybe almost a full 1/16 of an inch, but less than a 1/16 over 10 inches. I think we're going to be okay on that as well. I mean, the biggest measurement on any of these pieces is, I think, 1 1/4 inches. So, that's going to be off maybe 1/100th of an inch or something. I don't know. But that is close enough to be acceptable. You will never notice that amount of distortion on something this size. As far as the actual hero prop for the movie, it only has these 3 graphics on it. There's some confusion because leading up to Return of the Jedi, they were doing some promotional exhibits, and they took an existing Empire Strikes Back jetpack and they painted it up to send out to some of these exhibitions. And when they did that, they included these three graphics as well as those. And they're down toward the bottom of the jetpack. I've got them laid out sort of in their positions. This goes on the white section at the bottom on the left. This one's the white section at the bottom on the right. And this is actually in the yellow, just below that dorsal piece. Just below that, at the very bottom of the yellow central tube, that one goes at the bottom of that. But like I said, those are not actually on the actual hero. So I'm not going to include them, but I went ahead and put them on here in case you want to. But we're not ready to start cutting anything out yet because, and this was a big surprise to me when I bought this paper, we're not done. Now that we've heated this whole thing up and we've cured the ink, we have to, what they said, seal it. I don't know exactly if we're sealing anything or if this is the part that actually slides off. I haven't really done any experimentation to see exactly how this stuff works. But we need to put 3 coats of some sort of matte finish. You want to make sure it's matte. What was suggested to me was the Rust-Oleum matte finish. And I couldn't find it in any of the stores I went to, but Krylon also makes a matte finish. Now you want to make sure that you're getting the matte finish and not matte lacquer, or there's about 4 or 5 different versions of a clear matte finish that you can put on, but they don't say that they are matte finish. This stuff is meant to protect artwork, as you can see from the drawing here. Does that mean that I can't use this that we used earlier on the jetpack itself, this lacquer overcoat? I don't know. I wanted to get this video out as quickly as possible because it was kind of an oversight on the last video. So I really wasn't able to do a bunch of testing to see what all worked and what didn't work. I've just basically been, kind of following the directions of everything that I could look up to see the best way to do this. And they all said to use a matte finish like this. Okay, so to spray this stuff, I've shaken this up for 2 minutes, which is what it says in the instructions. And I like to I'll go this way overlapping, and then I'll go ahead and go back this way overlapping and do both of those. I'm just over here and I'm looking at the reflection of the light in there to see if there's any areas that look like they didn't get hit, and then hitting those. And we can either wait an hour or 30 minutes to an hour just for this to completely dry, or we can hit it with the hairdryer. And I'm not particularly patient, so let me go clear this and then we'll get to the hairdryer. Okay, so I just took that over to my trash can and turned it upside down and sprayed it for a few seconds until I heard there's no more spray coming out. Just want to make sure you clear your nozzles, otherwise you won't be able to use it again. Now, this would be your argument for not not hitting this with a hairdryer, but letting it actually just dry. I now have to put some weights on this, and that's going to probably glue these down to the paper. We'll find out. Now, the instructions did specifically say don't try to dry this in the oven now that you've sprayed this protective matte finish on there because you don't want to burn your house down. I'm going to go low setting at first. Okay, I went over and checked, and there's absolutely no shine to this paper at all anymore. And that's what I was afraid of, which means I've got stuff on my 123 block, and it means also there's probably some parts of the paper that are not coated now. No, that's probably totally fine, but we can go ahead and put another coat on. But then after that, I think I'm going to go ahead and just let it air dry so I don't have to worry about getting sticky stuff all over my 123 blocks or smearing stuff on the paper or anything like that. So let's just see how this works. Once again, I'm just checking to see if there's any spots that look like they didn't get a good coat. And I'm gonna go clear this out, and then I'll come back in 10 minutes and see how it looks. It's been 10 minutes and I just came back and checked and everything is dry. So let's go ahead and put another coat on. Not sure why I'm having this problem with it moving when I didn't the first time. Okay, that should be the last coat. And we'll come back in 10 minutes and see if this one's dry as well. Okay, it's been about 11 minutes and it is completely dry again. And it's not exactly hot out here. I think it's 62 degrees Fahrenheit. So this stuff dries pretty darn quickly. Yeah, I would probably just, I'd skip trying to use the hairdryer on this part. You're still gonna need it to dry the ink itself out, but as far as the matte finish, I would skip using the hairdryer on that and just let it air dry. In 10 minutes, it's good. Now, because this is the last coat that we're gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and leave this at least 30 more minutes. Then we'll come back and start working on it. Okay, so actually I went out and had dinner, so it's been a couple of hours. And it looks like we have had some extra drying because it's got a bit of a curl to it now, which is totally fine. But we can go ahead and start cutting these out now. So in general, you just want to cut them out as close to the whatever you're trying to cut out as possible. But no matter what you do, in certain light, you'll be able to see a little bit that there is a different surface. In other words, where you cut this out and there's not, your graphic's not there, if there's not ink, you're going to see a little bit of a slightly different finish than the rest of the jetpack. So you could just cut these out perfectly in individual pieces and then stick them on, or what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut them out in the exact square of the space that it fits on the jetpack. So basically you've got that black stripe that comes around, and then there's a gap in the middle, and I'm going to cut this out in a square that is that size. And you could measure this. I mean, let's be honest, this doesn't have to be super precise, but you could measure this, but it's not going to be perfect because when we put those stripes on the jetpack, you know, they're both different. We both set them up differently, and for the center, the horizontal, or the vertical part, we just put a piece of tape across there when we sprayed it and then peeled it up to reveal the white underneath. So we didn't measure that when we put it on there. We just eyeballed it to make sure it looked straight. What I'm basically coming down to is they're going to be slightly different. So what I just did is I took some of this tracing paper and I laid it on top of the actual jetpack and just traced out the space that's there. It's pretty straightforward. And I made one for the left and one for the right. And don't forget to mark them so you don't get them confused. Also, it helps so that you'll know that what side is up. And this should be fairly tight. So So I'm trying to line this up from off to the side, so I'm not 100% sure it's going to be perfect. And instead of drawing lines on here, I'm going to just put a dot in the corner, because there is a possibility that this might show up on the actual transfer. And I'm pretty sure that is the only way this could fit. And we'll do the same thing here. Okay. And now I can just take my ruler and X-Acto and sort of connect the dots, and I'll cut those out real quick. As for these other ones, I'm just going to cut them as close to the bottom of the letters and as close to the top of the letters, and just, you know, do it as closely as possible. Same would go with these. So I'm going to cut those out and I'll be right back. So I cut these out with the X-Acto, and what I did when I was connecting the dots, basically if any part of the graphic was outside of the dots, I just cut in a straight line up to that, and then I went around the graphic. So it's okay if this sticks a little bit, you know, I don't know if that really helps at all. But you can probably see it better here. When I came to an area, I just went outside the lines. And for this one, you don't have to get too nitpicky, but I just wanted to get as close to the edges as I could. And I'm not going to use these stickers here, but if you do, just do the exact same thing. Just cut as close as you can, and then you'll have it. Now let's go ahead and put this onto the jetpack. And to do that, well, first we need the jetpack. We also have our decals. Kind of get them sort of roughly where they go. And I have some water. Now you don't want cold water, and you don't want, you know, boiling water. You want just warm water, somewhere between body temperature and slightly warm to the touch, maybe. Make sure there's no dust or anything on your spot. And I'm just going to drop this into the water. And I'm going to wait 20 to 30 seconds. It's been less than a minute. Yeah, it's already, so it's been maybe, you know, 30 seconds, and I can feel that the transfer is ready to slide off of the paper. So I'm going to take this brush. You can use your finger, you don't have to use a brush, but I'm just going to put some water on here just because it helps to be able to move things around. Really, the brush is more for being able to manipulate. Oh, okay, that just came right off of my finger. Normally I would use a brush for this. I'm dipping that finger. I don't want to use a dry finger. And I just want to line this up as perfectly as I can. And then using my wet fingers, I want to make sure there's no air bubbles. You can buy these brushes that are made of silicone, and they're really not a brush, they're just sort of brush shaped. And you can do this with that. But, you know, for something as easy as this, your fingers are going to work just fine. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. I guess let's go ahead and use this one. I just want to check and see if it's ready to start sliding on the paper, and it is. And for this one, we just want it to be with the little circle facing toward the top of it. And we're just going to put it sort of centered between here and here on the yellow, not too far down. Let's go ahead and get some water up here. That was a little bit the way more like you're supposed to do it. Put it up there and then you slide it off of the paper, sort of into position. I just want to make sure that it looks straight. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight, it just has to look like it's straight. It's like I can't make it move, but when I'm trying to let go, it moves. Okay, I think that's good enough. And you could probably put these all in at the same time, but I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't know what happens if you leave this in too long. So that's why I'm doing them one at a time. I think that's been maybe 10 seconds. And it is sliding. These are big enough and flat enough. They're not going onto a complex curve or anything. So they're pretty easy to manipulate. You don't have to worry about it too much. It won't move. You can kind of get underneath there with the brush. And just fiddle around with it until you get it right where you want it. And then you can kind of push all the water out. They talk about folding up the backer paper and using that to squeegee everything out, but with such small pieces, I don't think that's really necessary. Okay. Now the instructions say that if you aren't going to give this a heat source, we can come back and hit it with the blow dryer, I guess, but we obviously can't put this in an oven, so they suggest waiting 3 days for them to completely dry. But I'm going to give these about 30 or 40 minutes and then we can take a little better look at them. Now that this has had plenty of time to be completely dry, I don't like it. Pretty obvious that this has not worked. It worked fine when I did it on the prototype, but that's basically a primered surface and this is painted, so I'm guessing that has something to do with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this off and put it back in the water. Maybe I can use this as the opportunity to get a little better footage. Yes, what I'm going to do this time is there's a couple of products that you can buy. It comes as a set, and I think it was like $7 on Amazon. It's Microscale Industries Incorporated, Micro Set, and Micro Sol. I'll see if I can't put a link to this down in the description. And I'm just going to take a brush, and this is the, you want to start with the Micro Set, and I'm just going to put it on the area where this is going to go. And I'm going to go ahead and place this back on. Make sure I get it in the right orientation. Okay, and this I'm going to go ahead and use the hair dryer on it, speed things up. Okay, now that I've got that on there, I'm going to go back in with the other bottle, which is the Micro Sol. I'll let that dry again, and hopefully that'll take care of everything. I was trying to do this without using the Micro Sol, the Micro Set, just to make it easier, but it looks like we might be needing it. And I'm going to put another coat of the Microscale on. Okay, and now I'm just going to repeat that process with the other piece over here, which you can't see because I'm zoomed in. Goes back in the water. This is, once again, this is the micro set. This is for setting it in place. Then while that is still wet, we're going to go ahead and put this back on. Now for the Microscale, which is a solvent for water transfer stickers. And while I'm waiting for that to dry up naturally, I think I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this other one. I don't know if this will have some dimension to it like paint would, so I feel like I want to feather out the edge. Now that that's dry, let's go ahead and put on some of the Microscale onto this one. And we can do a second coat over here on this one. While we're at it, we can go ahead and put another one over here as well. I'm gonna wait for that to completely dry first, so wait 5 minutes and I'll be back, and then we can put one last coat over here. Okay, let's put one last coat of the Microscale on here. Okay, and that's it. Let's take a look at this. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks pretty good. I was a little worried there for a second when it didn't want to stick, but I think with the help of the Microscale and the micro set, it really seems to just, become part of it. It looks more like it's painted on. The one in the middle and the one on the left looks painted on at this point. The one on the right is a little bit lighter. It's a little lighter black to me than the stripe is. So it looks a little bit different. But in the next video, we're going to go ahead and hit it with some dulling spray and stuff, and I think it'll really tie everything together. As usual, if you liked the video, found it helpful or any of that stuff, like, subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help. In the next video, not only will we be doing the last little bits to these decals, at least as far as tying the whole thing together, but we're going to take the whole thing and weather it. We'll go ahead and basically add the dirt and grime and scuffs that will go along with all these dents and scratches that are everywhere. It really, in my opinion, takes something that looks good but is a little bit surreal and brings it to life. It looks like a prop now. After the weathering, it'll look real. So I'm really looking forward to that. But until then, thanks.